Welcome, fellow confidence crusaders, neuro nerds, and success equalizers. This is your podcast, Real Confidence. I'm your host, Alyssa DeVere, and I'll be sharing a bit of basic brain science, some surprising social secrets, and a touch of tough love. Why? Because I believe confidence is everyone's fundamental right and choice. So let's get to it. I am really looking forward to this conversation for a lot of reasons. I think that I'm going to learn a lot. I know that the listeners will. So John Lawyer, thank you for joining. And I want you to just start by telling a little bit of your story, because even if I read it, it would not probably be half as interesting as you telling it straight from your own perspective.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. I started out, left home right after high school, joined the Army. I did Army counterintelligence, and this was right before 9/11. I got through my training, 9/11 happened, and I had spent the next 2.5 years on and off in Kuwait, half my enlistment, and then I became a civilian pretty much doing the same thing, and spent 18 months in Baghdad, about 6.5 years in Kandahar. So about 12 years or so out of the first 15 years of my adult life in combat zones and working 110 hours a week, 7 days a week. And so this is very busy life. And that's kind of how my adulthood started. And that's kind of the base part of my story.
I mean, I'm literally speechless because I can't even, it would be irresponsible for me to even say I could imagine. I wonder when let's roll back just for the sake of it for now, but like when you enlisted, did you ever have that vision that that's where you would end up, like in those massive battle zones?
No, I mean, I didn't at all believe that it would happen like that. And it would have been hard to envision 20 years of war, that the country went into. But, I had always wanted to do counterterrorism, and I got to do that. So I kind of was like doing what I had always wanted to do. It ends up being not what you thought, but no, I couldn't have ever imagined it.
Counterterrorism, what does that really mean?
Oh, basically, we would try to figure out what the quote unquote enemy was doing and try to stop it before bad things would happen. Interdiction of the terrorists, and find out where they're at, find out what they're doing, and try to prevent them from doing it.
Wow. So, there's always divine intervention, I think, happening around us if we pay attention, right? I think you and I are meant to speak. Last night, I was speaking with a young woman who had been a diplomat in Istanbul when the coup attempt was. And I'm going to ask you the same question I asked her. Is you're in a situation where your own life is being threatened every second, but you have this massive responsibility to the people that you're working with and at home and everything. How do you balance something? I mean, did you during that time where you're like, I'm going to die, or like, what was going through your head?
I think at times when like big events happen, like big attacks, like missile attacks or like ground attacks, attack the base, like in Afghanistan, I think that it was just, we're taught to do a job. And I think it goes into confidence, which is, the topic of your podcast, right? Like this, it's about believing in yourself, believing that you're doing something that is connected to more than just yourself. And I think that you have to go back within yourself at that moment to kind of make it through those intense moments in your life.
Well, intense. So here's why we're out on this podcast, right? You're doing this unbelievably noble, impressive. I don't even have the words again to describe. Wow, right? And you're there, and you can do it. You're competent. So you, like you just said, you kind of put that in the front of the fear. But then it all came to a halt, and you came back. So what happened, and what happened to your confidence?
Yeah, when I came home after, like I said, 15 years total, 12 years on and off in the desert, came home. My wife had been with me the whole time, actually. We did the same job. And when we came home, we were both kind of lost. I was lost. I didn't really know who I was. I didn't really know what my identity was outside of that person, this like really driven, intense person. And so I was lost, and I had always been this confident person, and I didn't have confidence anymore.
So lost. Can you break that down a little bit for me? Like, would that feel like? What did it look like?
I think it was not known, when you don't know who you are, it's hard to figure out where you're at, where you're going, where you've been. And I knew I needed to heal, but I didn't even really know where to start. And I was dealing with like the mental, spiritual, emotional, and there was also physical trauma of rewiring the brain. And I have Gulf War syndrome as well. And so like there was all this stuff wrong with me. And so it's like, well, where do when you have a messy room, you like, where do you start cleaning, right? Like, where do you start?
Yeah, well, I'm shaking my head on screen with you because I'm like, yeah, I've experienced a messy room, but I've not experienced that kind of messy self question. And before we kind of dive into the resolution, because of course you figured it out. That's why we're here, right? But in that messy moment, I mean, given all the great work that you had done, you were still feeling like you didn't know where to go, or what do you think in hindsight now, of course? Was
I
it
think part,
real?
yeah, well, I think, yeah, well, yeah, I think that I think part of it is, especially having been a confident person and then suddenly you feel not confident, you have this complete loss of perspective and you have all this outside, you have this noise, right? I think one of the reasons that we lose confidence, I guess, at least for me, is that sometimes we let the noise overwhelm us. And I think that was part of it is there was all this noise around me from myself and my thoughts and all this stuff. And I think that was probably what was overwhelming from a not being able to find my confidence perspective was that background noise that got really loud.
Yeah, and I again, I don't want to be diminishing anything here, but when we started American Confidence Institute, at the time, my partner Lynette, she was working with athletes that were retiring at a ripe old age of somewhere in their mid-20s. Right, they went into either major or minor league sport kind of thing, and then at that moment, they also had that noise, and
Yeah.
I don't know who I am anymore. If I don't play baseball, who am I, right? So I want people to realize that even though you have what I would consider a very unique story, of course, that I think it can be translated into a lot of other people get laid off from their work. They all of a sudden wake up and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that, and I always say like no trauma is better or worse than other trauma. It's all, it's like it. So whether it's an athlete or whether it's someone who is a professional expert in their field, suddenly not having that thing that they identify with, it can be traumatic. And so it's not just confined to soldiers. I think this is a problem that many people could have.
Yeah. So would you share a little bit of like the kind of noise? Like what were the messages you were telling yourself? What was it that you were saying? This I'm confused. What was it?
I think part of the noise was, you got to do something, you got to do this, that, or the other. And it's like part of me was saying, well, but I don't want to do this, that, or the other. I want to go be that person that I was, or whatever I'm going to do would not have the same color and the same excitement as what I was doing. So I don't want to do it. So I think there's that noise of do this, do this, do this. And then you're saying back, I don't want to do that. I don't want to leave this place because there's no excitement to where I'm going.
So the comfort and the safety, I will say, of being home was not really a benefit, or didn't overshadow the benefit of the excitement that you had had in the past. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get back to it. People get, it's like whether you call them extreme sports guys or adrenaline junkies or war junkies, it's all the same thing, right? You get addicted to that thing of excitement. Your brain gets rewired. It's even physiological. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing.
All right. So let's get into the second piece of this in just a minute. I'm going to count uh, our sponsor in. We're going to just give a couple seconds, and then let's talk about how you went from that addiction to where you are now? Because you certainly tackled it in a beautiful way. So just give us 5. Want to level up your confidence, your career, maybe even your coaching? Well, then head over to AmericanConfidenceInstitute.com. E-classes are there, as well as our coaching certification program, and you don't need any coaching experience to do it. However, if you are an experienced coach, you can get ICF and SHRM continuing credit. It's fast and easy. If you work in an organization, consider bringing in a kick-ass keynote or a uniquely engaging workshop. We also have team learning programs, and they all apply to both your personal and professional life, which makes them really special. They're great for ERGs, the leaders, the member programming, or really any type of professional learning and development in your organization. So give us a holler at www.AmericanConfidenceInstitute.com. John, let's talk about the moral of this story, because it has a happy ending, and you definitely did some hard work to really overcome. And you called it noise. I think some people would even say they're demons, right? They're the ones that are hacking inside the head. So tell us a little bit about first of all, what was the moment you were like, okay, enough, I'm going to do something? What triggered that moment for you?
It was a bit spontaneous. I was laying in bed one night and I kind of had a moment of clarity, understanding that loving kindness and light, and it gave me a glimpse into what confidence was again. And I think that was the moment where I was able to kind of turn it around.
So what did you do at that point?
One of the things that I had done to be confident in my life before was to be an expert, to know things, to read, to understand, to learn. So I had this new moment, and so I wanted to go learn about it. I read a bunch of books. I read 60 books in 4 months. I read everything I could. I talked to people about it. I kind of immersed myself in it, and understanding where I was and who I was and my connection with other people, with the oneness of the universe, and a connection with myself. I think that's what really helped me regain my confidence.
So explain that a little bit more for people who aren't familiar with that phrase, oneness with the universe, and for yourself. Where were you in that process? How do you get there, and where are you now?
I think that if you take a step back and you quiet that noise or the demons or whatever you want to call it, when what you're left with is you, and you have to be comfortable with that. I think if you embrace it and you say, oh, this is who I am. And I think when I say oneness, I mean a connection with nature, a connection that I'm part of the universe. I'm stardust. So are you. We're the same thing. I think that's a beautiful concept that can tell us who we are at our base level. And I think that understanding and loving ourselves, then suddenly we can embrace that confidence within. It comes out, because that we're shedding that noise around us.
It again, a little maybe divine intervention on a grand scheme here. But the other night I was thinking about this, that we're always so worried that we're not being something that we're not. And yet, if we look at the fact that we come to the planet with some purpose, whatever it might be, some impact, some sense of I'm supposed to be here for a reason, it makes life a lot easier, doesn't it?
Oh, I love that you said that, because part of this whole process for me was I finally understood what my higher purpose was in life. And if you're in tune with what your purpose is in life, what your dharma is in life, suddenly that aligns with what you're doing every day. And suddenly you're just this more calm, peaceful person. And that's kind of like mainlining confidence at that point.
It is. And, from a institute perspective, we really talk about being clear about your values, needs, and wants. And that is in many definitions of purpose. So your higher purpose, how did you find it? What is it?
I kind of understood that my job wasn't to help people, but to help people help themselves and know that they're whole inside, know that they have a light, whether they can see it in the dark or not, and to move forward with that they are whole inside, that they do have light, they can walk their own path. And I knew that's what I was meant to do. And
so how does that manifest day to day?
One of the things I did was I worked for the past 2 years every day to create an online nonprofit spiritual community where people could kind of share their stories, share their journeys, and live more calm and peaceful lives. And I think part of that is finding their confidence. And so that became my purpose.
Wonderful. And so if you wouldn't mind, please tell people if they want to check out, join the community, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, our website is kishar.org, KISHAR.org, and they can find everything about us right there and check us out.
Yeah. And, I often get pitched different guests who want to talk about all kinds of spiritual things. And I think the thing that really attracted me to you and your story is that, yeah, it's spiritual, but I think it's very deep and it's very neuro connected. So in our last minute here, if people were to kind of jump into the community or follow you, like what kind of expectation would they have? What kind of information or things do you offer just so they get a better sense?
Yeah, we offer daily tools to be grounded, daily guided meditations, daily journaling prompts, stuff that you can do that's practical, that can kind of ground you in your day-to-day, center you, so that you have more time and space for that spiritual journey. Because as we live in the real world, we have to be in the real world. We're not all live in a monastery, right? So it's tools for people to connect as well and have just conversations. And that's not on Facebook, not on Instagram. It's just calm and peaceful.
I love it. I love it. I really want to thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for all the service that you did for all of us here domestically. And, just thank you for the work that you're doing and bringing confidence to the world. What a joy to meet.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the messages you're putting out in the world as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Before we totally wrap up, I want to let you know that full transcripts and show notes for this and other Real Confidence episodes can be found on www.americanconfidenceinstitute.com/podcast. I also want to remind you once again that the best way to get confidence is to give it to others, and you can do it just by liking and sharing this episode on your preferred podcast and social media channels. You can even give me some confidence by noting topics you'd like me to consider for the future. So for now, this is Alyssa DeVere. Thank you for helping to bring more confidence to the world. Master editing done by Ben Weinstein, with original music performed and composed by Jeff Mitchell. Real Confidence is a production of American Confidence Institute. All rights reserved.